Once, I was told to admit a psych patient at 3 a.m.
The shift began at 4 in the morning, and already the exhaustion pressed down like a weight I couldn't shake. Overnight rotations had their own rhythm, long stretches of silence punctuated by sudden bursts of chaos, but this one carried something heavier. I had been given a battered old ambulance and stationed in a part of the city where people rarely lingered without reason. It wasn't just poor, it was abandoned in places, a patchwork of trailer parks, collapsed apartment blocks, and a shopping center whose glow had died years ago. We parked behind that shopping center, a hollow structure with locked doors and blank windows. The asphalt lot was broken, cracked lines sprouting weeds through cement. Even the street lamps felt tired, their glow too weak to reach the edges of the lot. The silence was immense, but it wasn't the calm kind. It was the kind that made you wonder what was hiding behind it. I had chosen that spot carefully. The sun would come up in about an hour, and the shadows would retreat a little. Until then, it felt like the safest place to wait for a call. My partner didn't care either way. He had the rare ability to fall asleep anywhere at any time, as though a switch flipped in his body the moment stillness settled. He leaned back in the front seat, his breathing steadying, his eyes closing without hesitation. I couldn't follow his lead. Sleep never came easily when I wasn't in a bed, let alone when I was parked in a deserted part of town with the weight of darkness pressing at the windows. I told him I'd head to the back, where the bench along the wall might allow me to stretch out, even if rest refused to come. The ambulance we'd been issued was old, its quirks frustrating. The side door couldn't be opened from the inside, which meant I had to step out, circle to the side, and crack it open from the outside before slipping back in. I left it just slightly ajar, enough to push it open quickly if the radio called us. It was an inconvenience, but one I had gotten used to. I stretched out on the bench, the vinyl cold against my back, and closed my eyes. For a while, I let the hum of silence wash over me, trying to trick my body into a shallow kind of rest. Maybe 5 minutes passed, maybe less. I wasn't quite drifting when my partner stirred. His voice came low, carrying something that shook me more than if he'd shouted. He asked if I was awake. I told him I was. He said someone was staring at us.
The words pulled me upright, adrenaline burning away the haze of fatigue. Through the windshield, across the street, I saw it. A faint orange glow, pulsing in the dark like a signal. A cigarette tip. The figure holding it stood near the park, half hidden in the shadow of the trees. The streetlight was too weak to reveal details, but the posture was unmistakable. Upright, still, facing us. The glow brightened, dimmed, brightened again. Each drag of the cigarette carved seconds into the silence. We watched without speaking. The figure didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't look away. Just stood there, staring. A stranger smoking at dawn should have been nothing unusual. But nothing about the stillness felt right. People fidget, people check their phones, people pace. This one didn't. The stillness was absolute, and the longer it lasted, the heavier it became. Minutes passed. 5, maybe more. My partner whispered that he'd been watching us for some time before he woke me. That meant 10, maybe 15 minutes of silent staring before I even noticed. My skin prickled. I forced myself to look away, scanning the lot, the shadows, the edges of buildings. Nothing else moved. When I looked back, the glow was gone. The figure had melted into the darkness as though it had never been there. We let out nervous laughter, a reflex to mask the unease. My partner muttered something about attics, about the kinds of people who wandered parks at 5 in the morning. It made sense on the surface. It gave the encounter an explanation. But it didn't erase the weight in my chest. Logic was useless against the memory of that glowing cigarette tip pulsing like a heartbeat in the shadows. I tried to settle again, told myself to ignore it. The city was full of strange encounters. This was just another one. I stretched out on the bench and pulled the thin blanket over me. My partner leaned back again, his breathing steadying. For a moment, the world seemed quiet. Then he screamed. The shout cut through the silence like a blade. I bolted upright, heart pounding, head snapping toward the sound. His face was pale, eyes wide, locked on something outside. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared through the windshield. I followed his gaze. She stood no more than 6 meters in front of us.
The figure was fully visible now, caught in the pale wash of a streetlight. Long black hair hung straight down, framing a face so pale it seemed almost luminous. The body was shrouded in loose black clothing that swallowed the weak glow around it. She stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on my partner in the driver's seat, not moving, not blinking, just staring. The air inside the ambulance grew thick. My chest tightened, each breath harder than the last. Her face carried no expression, no trace of emotion or humanity, just a flat, unbroken stare that made her seem less like a person and more like a figure pulled from a nightmare. My partner gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Sweat beaded across his forehead. I sat frozen, unable to move, caught between disbelief and a fear that rooted me to the bench. Outside, the silence deepened, wrapping around us until even the hum of the streetlight seemed to vanish. Seconds stretched, maybe minutes. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe, or if she did, it was too shallow to see. The stillness was unbearable. Every instinct screamed at me to act, to move, to do anything but sit and watch. But fear paralyzed me. It was as though she had anchored us with her stare, bound us in place with invisible threads. When my partner finally shifted, the spell broke. He turned to me, eyes wild, lips trembling as though words tried to form and failed. He didn't need to speak. I already knew. Whatever she wasn't leaving.
The figure didn't vanish. She remained in the pale cone of the streetlight, body rigid, hair framing her face like a curtain of darkness. Her stare did not shift. It locked on my partner with a force that felt physical, as if the glass between them was the only barrier keeping her from pressing into the ambulance itself. I felt the urge to blink, to glance away, to break the spell, but I couldn't. My eyes stayed fixed on her, even as dread pooled in my stomach. There was nothing natural about her presence. People shift weight, scratch at their arms, clear their throats. She did none of that. She stood as though carved, her body anchored in place, her focus unrelenting. My partner whispered something, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, but his voice cracked under the weight of it. His breathing grew shallow, fast, sweat traced down his temple. He had been in worse neighborhoods than this, had seen men stagger bleeding into our ambulance, had worked in chaos and violence. Nothing had ever shaken him. But this woman, this silent figure, unraveled him in seconds. I tried to move. My legs resisted. It felt like the air inside the ambulance had thickened, slowed me, pressed against me like water. Every motion became heavy.
My hand reached for the side door only to freeze halfway. I remembered the flaw. The latch couldn't be opened from the inside. To get out, I'd have to use the narrow rear exit, crawl through the cramped space, and circle around. Outside, she remained still. A faint breeze pushed her hair across her face, but she didn't flinch. Her skin looked impossibly pale under the streetlight, drained of color, stretched thin over sharp cheekbones. Her eyes glimmered like glass, reflecting the weak light, unblinking. Then she moved. Not much, just a shift of her foot, a slight lean forward, but the stillness shattered. The movement was slow, deliberate, each step carrying the weight of inevitability. She was coming closer. My partner's hand shot for the ignition, fumbling for the keys. His knuckles struck the steering column with a dull thud. Panic scrambled his movements. I shouted at him to move, to start it, to get us out. But his fingers slipped, clumsy. The engine remained silent. I twisted, scrambling toward the back. The narrow bench pressed against my knees as I pushed myself toward the rear doors. My body felt too big for the space, too slow. I jammed my shoulder against the handle, shoved it open enough to squeeze through, and dropped onto the cold asphalt.
Far down the street, under another street lamp, another figure stood. The same height, the same pale skin, the same black clothing. The cigarette tip pulsed, orange and alive, a heartbeat in the dark. I didn't slow down. We drove for blocks, weaving through the empty streets. The silence inside the cab broken only by ragged breathing. My partner pressed both hands against his face, muttering under his breath. I kept my eyes forward, afraid of what I might see if I looked anywhere else. The radio crackled once, breaking the suffocating quiet. A dispatcher's voice called for a unit nearby, listing an address not far from where we had just been. My partner reached for the mic, his fingers trembling. His voice cracked as he answered. We were closest. We would take it. Neither of us wanted to return to that area, but refusing wasn't an option. We turned down another street, following the directions, each corner sharp, each shadow heavier. The address led us to a trailer park, its rows of rusting homes lit by a scattering of weak lamps. Most windows were dark. The silence was immense. We pulled to the curb. My partner stepped out first, his flashlight trembling in his hand. I followed, the cold air biting through my uniform. We walked toward the address, each step echoing too loudly against the cracked pavement. Then, I felt it. The weight of eyes. I turned, scanning the rows of trailers. Shadows stretched across the ground, long and distorted. And there, at the edge of the lot, under a flickering streetlight, stood a figure. Black clothing, pale face, straight hair hanging loose. The glow of a cigarette tip pulsing faintly. I froze. My partner saw her too. The flashlight beam wavered, shaking uncontrollably. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because the figure wasn't alone anymore.
The air outside felt heavier. The streetlight buzzed overhead, its glow dimming as though choked. My shoes scraped the ground as I rushed along the side of the ambulance, heading for the driver's door. She was closer now, no longer 6 meters, maybe 4. Her steps made no sound, yet the weight of them pressed into my chest. She stared straight at my partner, her gaze unbroken, as though she hadn't noticed me. That made it worse. I yanked the driver's door open. My partner flinched, eyes tearing away from her for the first time. I shouted at him to slide over, but the words felt swallowed, muffled by the thick air. He didn't move. He was frozen, gripped by her stare. I shoved against him, sliding into the seat, fumbling with the keys. My hands trembled so violently the metal missed the slot twice before sliding in. I twisted, praying for the engine's roar. Instead, the starter coughed once, then died. The silence that followed felt like a grave closing. She was nearly at the hood now, no more than 2 meters away. Her hair hung forward, veiling her face for a moment, before she lifted her head slowly. Her eyes caught the light. They were too dark, too deep, like pits reflecting nothing. My stomach lurched as if gravity itself had shifted. I slammed the ignition again. The engine sputtered, caught, roared to life. Relief surged through me, sharp and fleeting. I jammed my foot onto the accelerator. The tires shrieked against the asphalt, echoing through the empty lot. The ambulance lurched forward. She didn't move. For a heartbeat, I thought the vehicle would hit her, crush her under its weight. But as the headlights swept across her, her figure blurred, dissolved, and then reappeared at the side of the lot, far beyond where we had seen her. She was standing in the shadow again, cigarette tip glowing faintly. My partner screamed, his voice breaking. I kept my foot on the pedal, swerving hard onto the main road. The tires spat gravel. My pulse hammered. I couldn't stop shaking. In the rear-view mirror, the lot shrank away, swallowed by distance. But the glow remained.
2 more stepped out of the shadows, each identical, each pale and still, each holding the faint glow of a cigarette. Their movements were synchronized, deliberate, like reflections pulling themselves free from mirrors. The flashlight slipped from my partner's hand, clattering to the ground. The beam rolled across the asphalt, illuminating their faces, white, flat, expressionless, with eyes that swallowed the light whole. They began to walk forward. They walked in unison, 3 pale figures crossing the cracked pavement of the trailer park, each step measured, each face identical in its blankness. The glow of their cigarettes pulsed faintly, orange embers flaring against the dark, as if their breath was the only proof they were alive. The weak streetlight above flickered once, twice, before steadying again, but its glow seemed powerless against them. My partner stumbled backward, his boots scraped loudly across the ground, echoing like shouts in the silence. I couldn't breathe. The air pressed in from every angle, as if the night itself had thickened. My eyes darted left, right, searching for an escape, but the rows of trailers felt endless, each one sagging inward like hollow teeth in a broken jaw. They didn't rush. That was worse. Each step was deliberate, patient, as though they already knew we had nowhere to go. I grabbed my partner's arm and pulled him toward the ambulance. His body resisted, legs sluggish, mind locked in shock, but adrenaline gave me strength. We reached the vehicle, and I shoved him toward the passenger side while fumbling with the driver's door. The keys rattled in my shaking hands. The engine roared to life on the first turn this time, but even the sound felt swallowed, muffled by the weight pressing in on us. I slammed the gear shift and punched the accelerator. The tires screamed, spitting gravel, the ambulance lurching forward so violently that my partner slammed against the dashboard. The figures didn't chase. I risked a glance in the mirror. They stood in the middle of the road now, side by side, watching us leave. Their stillness was almost worse than pursuit. They looked like shadows anchored in flesh, waiting, patient. The glow of their cigarettes dimmed as the distance stretched, but the image was carved into my mind.
We didn't speak for blocks. The silence inside the cab was broken only by the ragged draw of breath, each inhale sharp, each exhale shaking. My partner clutched the dashboard as though it were the only solid thing left in the world. His lips moved, muttering something over and over, too quiet for me to hear. I didn't want to stop, but the dispatcher's voice returned, crackling over the radio, demanding status. I forced myself to answer, my voice steadier than I felt. We had reached the address, I said, but no one was there. We were clear. The words tasted like lies. The dispatcher acknowledged, tone clipped, professional. Business carried on as though nothing had happened. The city blurred past us, empty streets, dark houses, the occasional flicker of a neon sign buzzing against the silence. Yet every shadow looked sharper now, every corner heavier. My eyes kept returning to the mirrors, convinced I'd see them there, standing in the wash of the taillights, waiting. Minutes stretched like hours. My partner finally spoke, his voice hoarse. He asked if I had seen their faces. I told him I had. He shook his head, muttered that faces shouldn't look like that. He said their eyes weren't eyes, that they were holes, deep enough to fall into. I didn't argue. I had seen it too. The road curved, leading us past another cluster of buildings. A gas station stood at the corner, its lights still buzzing weakly despite the hour. Relief flickered in me. Civilization, a place with cameras, with people, with something tangible. I turned sharply, pulling into the lot, tires crunching against the gravel. The station was empty. No clerk visible behind the counter, no customers at the pumps. The neon sign above the shop sputtered, its letters half dead. The glow felt sickly, casting more shadow than light. We sat there, engine idling, neither of us willing to move. My partner finally unbuckled, muttering that he needed air. He stepped out, his boots crunching against the gravel, and walked toward the pump. His shoulders sagged as though the weight of what we'd seen had drained every ounce of strength from him. I stayed inside, gripping the wheel, my eyes scanning every angle of the lot. Shadows pooled around the edges, heavy and thick. The pumps stood like silent sentinels. The glass of the shop reflected the weak glow, warped and twisted. Then I saw it. A reflection that didn't match.
In the glass of the shop's window, just behind my partner, a figure stood. Black clothing, pale skin, long hair hanging loose. The glow of a cigarette tip pulsed faintly. My breath caught. I blinked hard, convinced it was a trick of the light, but when my eyes opened again, it was still there. The figure didn't move. My partner didn't notice. He leaned against the pump, head tilted back, eyes closed, trying to calm himself. I shouted his name. My voice cracked, too loud in the silence. He snapped his head toward me, startled, and followed my gaze to the window. His face drained of color. Slowly, he turned. No one was there, but the glow remained in the reflection, pulsing faintly, as though the glass remembered what the world had erased. He stumbled back toward the ambulance, his steps uneven, his eyes wide. He yanked the door open and threw himself inside, slamming it shut behind him. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The terror on his face was enough. We pulled out of the lot, gravel spitting under the tires. My chest ached with every breath. The city no longer felt like streets and buildings. It felt like a maze, every corner hiding something, every shadow waiting. The radio crackled again. Another call. Another address. My partner begged me not to answer. His voice shook, desperation laced through it. But I couldn't ignore dispatch. I pressed the mic, confirmed. The address was only a few blocks away. A residential street. Old houses lined shoulder to shoulder, their porches sagging, their windows dark. As we rolled down the block, I counted the houses. 1, 2, 3. At the fourth, the number matched. We stopped. The house loomed. 2 stories, its siding warped, its windows blind with grime. The porch light flickered weakly, casting a faint glow across the steps. The silence here was deeper, heavier, as though the air itself resisted sound.
We didn't want to go in. Every instinct screamed against it, but procedure demanded we check. We stepped out together, flashlights trembling in our hands, the gravel crunched underfoot. The porch groaned as we climbed it. My partner knocked, once, twice. No answer. Then the light flickered again, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, I saw her standing at the end of the street. Pale face, black clothing, still, watching. When I blinked, she was gone. We turned back to the door. It creaked open on its own, swinging inward slowly, the sound dragging against the silence like nails across glass. The house yawned before us, its darkness swallowing the beam of our flashlights. We stepped inside. The air was cold, unnaturally so. Our breath fogged faintly. The floorboards groaned under our weight. The walls pressed close, peeling wallpaper sagging. The smell of rot heavy. Every step deeper felt wrong. The silence grew thicker, heavier, until it was almost impossible to breathe. I felt the weight of eyes again, pressing between my shoulder blades. I turned the flashlight, sweeping across the hall. Nothing, just empty walls, broken furniture, shadows. Then a sound. Not footsteps this time, breathing. Slow, shallow, steady. It came from deeper in the house. We froze. My partner's hand trembled against the flashlight. The beam shook wildly. We should have turned back. We should have left. But we didn't. We stepped forward, drawn as though the house itself demanded it. The sound grew louder. The hall stretched longer. Each doorway we passed gaped open, black and empty, but filled with a weight that made my skin crawl. Then we saw her. At the end of the hall, standing in the glow of our trembling lights, pale face, black clothing, long hair falling across her shoulders, her eyes locked on us. The glow of the cigarette tip pulsed faintly, orange, against the dark.
She stood at the end of the hallway, her body framed in the narrow glow of our flashlights. Her face was white and flat, the skin stretched taut over sharp bones, her eyes black hollows that reflected nothing. The cigarette glowed faintly, a pulse of orange that seemed to beat in time with my own racing heart. We froze, our lights trembling in our hands, the beam shaking wildly across the peeling wallpaper. My partner's breathing hitched, shallow and fast. I could feel the terror rolling off him, could feel my own body locked in the same paralysis. We shouldn't have entered the house. We both knew it. But we had, and now there was no way out except through the thing that waited at the far end of the hall. The air thickened. It pressed against us, heavy and wet, as if the house itself had lungs and we were trapped inside its breath. My flashlight flickered once, twice, before steadying again. But the beam felt weaker, swallowed by the darkness rather than piercing it. She didn't move. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand. The cigarette tip flared bright as she drew on it, smoke curling around her pale face, curling into the dark. The movement was so ordinary, so human, and yet the sight of it made my stomach drop. Something about the normalcy in that setting was worse than anything monstrous could have been. My partner stumbled backward, his boot catching on a broken board. The crack echoed too loud in the silence. The figure tilted her head slightly, as though the sound had interested her. Then she began to walk. Each step was deliberate, heavy, echoing through the hall. The floorboards groaned beneath her weight. She moved slowly, but the pace was unbearable, dragging seconds into eternities. We bolted. I grabbed my partner's arm, dragging him toward the door. The hallway seemed longer now, stretching unnaturally, every doorway identical, every wall warped. My boots slammed against the boards, each step too loud, too desperate. The front door loomed ahead, but when we reached it, the frame seemed warped, twisted, the knob rusted shut. I slammed my shoulder against it once, twice, 3 times. The wood shuddered but held. Behind us, the footsteps continued,
steady and unhurried. My partner screamed, voice cracking. He spun, raising his flashlight like a weapon, the beam slashing across the hall. For a moment, the light caught her face. Her eyes were closer now, darker, deeper. The cigarette's glow flared. She exhaled smoke that curled like fingers through the air. I threw myself at the door again. This time the wood cracked, splinters flying. With one final slam, it burst open, the frame giving way. Cold night air rushed in, sharp and heavy. We spilled onto the porch, our boots thundering against the rotten boards as we fled into the street. The ambulance waited at the curb, its lights dim in the distance. We sprinted toward it, lungs burning, hearts slamming against our ribs. Behind us, I heard the creak of the porch. She was stepping outside. The engine roared to life as I twisted the key. My partner slammed the door shut, his hands trembling violently. I shifted into drive, floored the accelerator, and the tire screamed as the ambulance leapt forward. The street blurred, shadows streaking past. I risked a glance in the mirror. She stood in the middle of the road, her body perfectly still, her eyes locked on us as the distance grew. Then, impossibly, another figure appeared beside her, identical, pale, black clothing, long hair. Both of them stared, unblinking, as the darkness swallowed them. My partner was sobbing now, his hands pressed against his face. I kept driving, block after block, desperate to put distance between us and whatever was following. But the further we went, the heavier the air became. The city itself felt wrong, distorted. We turned onto another street only to see them again. Two figures standing under a flickering lamp, their faces blank, their cigarettes glowing. We swerved away, tires squealing, only to find three more waiting at the next intersection. Then four more beyond that. They were everywhere.
Each time we turned, the road brought us to another cluster, standing, watching, waiting. Their presence multiplied, spreading through the streets like a disease. No matter where we went, they were already there, waiting under the weak glow of the streetlights, their pale faces turned toward us. My partner screamed at me to keep driving, to never stop, but I didn't know where to go. The city had become a maze, looping back on itself, every street leading us deeper into their web. The dispatcher's voice crackled again, calling for our status, but I couldn't answer. The radio felt useless, like a thread trying to hold back a flood. At last, we burst onto a highway, the road stretching wide and empty ahead. Relief surged in me. Open space, speed, distance. I floored the accelerator, the engine roaring, the tires biting into asphalt. The ambulance shot forward, the city shrinking behind us. For a while, the road was empty. Darkness pressed against the windows, but no figures appeared. My partner's sobs quieted, replaced by ragged breathing. My own pulse began to steady, though the tension never left. I kept my eyes fixed on the road, hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Then the headlights caught something ahead. A figure standing in the middle of the lane. Pale face, black clothing. The cigarette tip glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. I swerved violently, the tires screeching as the ambulance veered off the road, gravel spraying. The vehicle slammed back onto the asphalt, my arms fighting the wheel, my heart hammering. When I looked back, the road was empty, nothing there. We drove in silence. My partner muttered that it wasn't possible, that people couldn't be everywhere at once, that none of this made sense. I wanted to agree, but the words stuck in my throat. Logic had abandoned us miles ago. The highway stretched on. The horizon glowed faintly with the first hint of dawn. For a moment, I dared to hope. Maybe daylight would scatter them. Maybe the sun would burn away whatever clung to us. Then I looked in the mirror.
The road behind us was lined with figures, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Each one pale, each one still, each one staring. Their cigarettes glowed in unison, orange pulses beating like a single massive heart.
My chest tightened. My hands shook against the wheel. My partner began to scream again, his voice raw, his body curling against the seat. I pressed the accelerator to the floor, but no matter how fast we went, the figures remained, lining the road, their eyes unblinking, their faces pale and endless. The sun crested the horizon, casting weak light across the asphalt. For a heartbeat, I thought the glow would dissolve them, but it didn't. The light only revealed more detail, the cracks in their skin, the sharpness of their bones, the hollowness of their eyes. They looked less human now, more like mannequins animated by something cruel. The road stretched forever. The figures lined it endlessly, their cigarettes glowing, their stares unbroken. My partner begged me to stop, said we couldn't outrun them, said we had to face whatever this was. I shook my head, refused, pressed harder on the pedal. The ambulance roared, but the figures remained. Then the radio crackled again. The dispatcher's voice came, calm, professional, as though none of this was happening. She asked for our location, said another unit had reported strange activity in our sector, said they needed us to confirm. I reached for the mic with a trembling hand. My voice broke as I tried to respond. Static swallowed my words. And then beneath the static, a whisper. Low, urgent, indecipherable. It wasn't the dispatcher. It was them. My partner clawed at the mic, trying to tear it from the dash, but the whisper grew louder, filling the cab, pressing into our ears, into our skulls. I dropped the mic, slammed my hands back to the wheel, eyes fixed on the road. The figures moved then. For the first time, they moved. They stepped forward in unison, hundreds of pale bodies stepping off the shoulder, onto the asphalt, into the path of the ambulance. I screamed, slammed the brakes, the tires shrieking as the world tilted. The ambulance skidded, swerved, spun. The horizon blurred, the figures closing in, their eyes endless, their cigarettes glowing like fireflies. The world flipped, metal shrieked, glass shattered. Darkness swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes, I was still in the driver's seat. The windshield was cracked, blood in my mouth, my hands trembling against the wheel. The engine was silent. My partner was gone. His seat was empty, the door wide open. Outside, the road was quiet, empty. But the cigarettes still glowed. Dozens of them, hundreds. They stood all around the ambulance now, pressing closer, their eyes locked on me. I reached for the keys, twisted them, prayed for the engine's roar. Nothing. The cigarettes pulsed in unison, orange embers flaring. And then the whispers began again. Closer this time. Inside the ambulance.